My name is Ray Martindale.
I'm Austin Luger.
And I'm Keith Lipke.
And Keith Lipke is joining us for the finale here, the wrap-up episode of the Steven Spielberg 5, the 5 films. This is Let's Take 5, the podcast where we cover 5 of the 5 films of one of the cinema greats, and we sort of break them down. We always do these wrap-up episodes that are a little bit more casual. Now, I brought Keith Lipke on here. Keith's a friend of mine. He's basically probably, in some ways, the reason this podcast exists from my side of it, because talking movies with Keith was kind of the thing that brought me to end up enjoying films, and then my breadth of knowledge far surpassed him.
But it may or may not have.
but there was
we'll find out in a half hour.
Yeah, but no. But there's definitely that, and there was a time where we had these conversations, and we had a conversation about a lot of these films on here, and I brought you up, I believe, on the Jaws episode when I brought up the silent Spielberg suspense, which was coined by yours truly. Well, not yours truly. Him, and so I thought it'd be cool to have him on the show. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah.
So it's weird to have you for a wrap up episode. We were originally going to have him on for Schindler's List because you think it's the best movie ever made.
I do. I think it's the best. You guys will definitely. You've got me totally shellacked when it comes to going European and things like that. When it comes to American, this is definitely. I can at least say I think that is the greatest American-made film.
Well, it's
in my
the
opinion.
best movie we've covered on the podcast.
I thought so.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's talk about Steven Spielberg.
We covered 5 of his films in the past 5 weeks. We covered Jaws, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Schindler's List, Minority Report, and Munich. What do we think rewatching about them? And also let's talk about the rest of his canon.
Well, he's pop. He's not any good.
Yeah, I like that you pointed that out. It's very true. I think it's very true, but that doesn't mean that it's something that isn't great to watch and it's great to see. You know what I mean?
Well, he reminds you why we actually like to go to the movies.
Correct.
To begin with, and the pop thing is sort of given this negative connotation. Well,
Yes.
Michael Jackson was pop, and
Correct.
His music was great. That there's a
Who
reason
doesn't like Michael Jackson.
Exactly. Well, there's a reason why it's popular, and he set so many bars and so many standards about filmmaking in general that to dismiss him as sort of this pop sort of thing, like Steven Spielberg's a flash in the pan, like it's not real cinema, is absolutely the most pretentious thing in the world.
I think I realized while watching these films that I had accidentally done that, because I would, at the beginning of this, I could name so many films I think were just absolutely perfect, and yet rewatching even Last Crusade or Minority Report, which I had some problems with, every shot is incredible. He is an innovative filmmaker on every single scene, every single movie for decades now.
You were the one listening to your guys' podcast that you were specifically on Spielberg. You kept mentioning, and I thought we all agree, but you call it just his expertise in just visual stimulation when it comes to visual storytelling is absolutely bar none the best. It's the guy. Not only is, let's assume the script's good, then you have your performances are good. Mm-hmm. Then on top of that, it's all those little things that you can see every time that you watch. There's something new to always be, especially, I'm going to say Schindler's List, among others. Every time you rewatch that movie, there's always some little thing that you can catch going on in the background that's only forcing and backing up the entire story of the... He is really great. To coin a phrase for you, Austin, he is genius.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not the first one to say that.
I know, but I noticed that's the one that you tend to like the most. Because you're the greatest movie ever made, and you're a genius.
Yeah. I think that every film is the greatest film that we've ever covered. No, I've realized I'm self-aware, but there's a reason that comes from something. I said that Keith... I said that I probably wouldn't be here as part of this podcast if you didn't exist and we didn't have those conversations. There's a chance this podcast might not exist if Steven Spielberg didn't make movies. And I know it's probably being too big about it, but he's like the Hulk Hogan of wrestling.
It's true.
The reason why people knew who Hulk Hogan was and never watched wrestling in their lives, but they knew it.
Okay, well, let me use that, just using Hulk Hogan as an example here. Yeah. Going into what we're talking about when it comes to where's that pop and the possible negativity of the pop, you know what I mean, essence that people seem to think that exists with Steven Spielberg, but it'd be like, remember whenever Hulk Hogan was like the greatest of all. Like when he was primo for those first 5 years, and everybody was like wanted to be Hulk Hogan.
I wasn't alive, but I can't.
But you get what I'm saying? Yeah, everybody was like Hulk Hogan is the best. He is the best. Then there was that 5-year window where saying that was boring now. So people didn't want to say it. Now when you say it, they're like, well, of course he is. But like, pick somebody else.
Yeah, it's like Abercrombie and Fitch.
Well, and then we had that next window where it was kind of cool to acknowledge it again.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like the Beatles. The Beatles are amazing. They're arguably the greatest band of all time. But to say that becomes exhausting sometimes. People are like, I got it. I understand.
But who is really the greatest?
That's what I'm saying.
I think we're right now in that slump again for Spielberg appreciation because
Agreed. Just
last year, Bridge of Spies came out. I thought it was incredible.
I thought it was very strong. And that was kind of going back to like 20 years ago, Spielberg, which I really, really dug.
And it had a bit more of a political bent to it, like Munich, and it was still like incredibly innovative with that opening sequence, which is what your silent Spielberg suspense.
I love it, man. It exists
amazing.
In everything. In every movie he does, it's keen. It's totally there. I don't even know if he's aware that he's doing it.
Well,
he does it in every. I mean, there's some obvious ones like Jaws would be like the quintessential, but even
Munich does it.
That's what I was going to say. You guys mentioned it in Munich, which I think is probably utilized in the top 5 of any of his scenes to do that.
Sure.
With the little girl going to the piano lesson with the telephone. Oh my gosh, man. I mean, your heart is pounding. I don't care how many times you've seen that movie. Every time you're like, I hope she lives. I hope.
Yeah.
You know
I hope she
will,
lives
but
so they
hoping.
can murder her dad.
It's
that's the conflict of Munich, right? That's
true.
Sorry.
No. It's we're seeing him, and he was up for I think Best Director maybe for Bridge of Spies, but like everyone cuts him like, oh, he's like the 5th choice there.
See that? Yeah.
No, it's still incredible what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Lincoln was an incredible movie, and it wasn't the movie we all thought it was going to be.
Right.
Well, it's going to take a very typical biopic, but actually it was a really West Wing political period piece kind of thing.
That is kind of true. I wouldn't have thought
sneaking
of that
around.
Yeah.
And it was surprising, and it was funnier than we expected. He's still funny. He has a film coming up that I am very worried about because I wasn't a fan of the book. It's called Ready Player One, and it's so interesting because it's a movie set around. It's a sci-fi story that references an insane number of 80s movies, including his own. And he said he's taken out all of his own references from the movie.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, he's now making a movie about the time where he became king of movies.
Yeah, that's
and
interesting.
The
That
only
is kind of
director who I think will not be self-indulgent about it is him. Like, I don't even think Hitchcock would be able to like do that very well.
Well, no, he absolutely wouldn't be able to do that well. No, I mean that was. I love Steven Spielberg. You forget how much you love him because he's just always been there. Like, it's always there to kind of pull out anytime you want to. I mean, even the films that I don't like as much, like, just because this would cause a podcast shitstorm if we had more people listening, but like Jurassic Park, which I think is a good movie, but I don't think it's like the masterpiece everyone thinks it is. And I think if Jaws didn't exist, I would feel better about Jurassic Park. But even that film, I've seen it probably 25 times. I've had all kinds of conversations about that movie. That I can't imagine pulp culture without Jurassic Park.
That's the truth right there. That's absolutely the truth.
Yeah, so it's weird, like how effective he has been at sort of. I mean, in a lot of ways, he's pop culture personified, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Right. He makes the best of what we want out of a fun movie, because I recently rewatched Jurassic Park for the other podcast, and I do consider it still one of his absolute best films, because he just gets every small detail right. It is fun. It is paced brilliantly. It treats the audience with intelligence, respect, and the part that no one else can replicate as well is that he gets all the characters right. Mm-hmm. It's an ensemble where you can easily describe the characteristics of everybody. There's no like flat character. Or even in really fun movies today, with like a lot of like Marvel films, a lot of them are flat characters. We just kind of know their powers.
That's a problem there. I totally agree.
That's true. I just think he should have gone further with it.
Sure.
Because if you look at the characterization in Jaws, there's no comparison.
Yeah.
So like I just feel like the pieces were there, and I still like the movie. Also, I'm very fond of the book, one of the
best books I've ever read.
Yeah, it's so good. It's one of the best reads I've ever had. But the thing, I mean, it's not like he hasn't made some stinkers too. I was not a fan of War of the Worlds. Somebody was probably somewhere.
And that's that kind of lull area that I think we all were kind of thinking back, right? When you had like The Terminal, which was what are we doing here?
Terminal's a weird one.
There was War of the Worlds, which was just, there were moments. Don't get me wrong.
The Tim Robbins scene. Silence, suspenseful.
That's what I was going to say. When the eye comes down for like 6 whole minutes of no one talking at all, and they're just trying to hide. It's great. It's captivating.
Crystal Skull I don't like.
And there we go.
We have to start acknowledging films too.
Those are all back to back to back.
Yeah, I know.
We don't put Munich in there.
But
Lost World. But you
World.
have to, like, what I'm saying is, like, you have that, but then with this podcast, picking a 5, we still left out movies that are just beloved by people.
Dude, I mean, E.T. was the one I was like, that would have been great to hear. Mm-hmm. But I get it. I like the diversity in this one. Like, you guys covered a lot of bases picking these 5.
E.T. would be fun to watch again because E.T. kind of represents what we all think a Spielberg film is. Mm-hmm. That Netflix show that came out, Stranger Things,
right.
People kind of called it a Spielberg show,
right?
Because of the way the kids are and how the adventure is. We're only thinking
like a coming of age kind of deal. Yeah. You know what I mean?
We're thinking of just the complete world he was able to create emotionally with E.T.
Mm-hmm.
No one's talking about how this evokes Schindler's List, all this kind of, even Hook kind of thing. It's the Spielberg exactly of that moment in the 80s, where it's him doing this, also producing The Goonies and Poltergeist and whatnot. It's creating that neighborhood feel. That's why Super 8 is basically an homage to
completely
that time. And it's E.T. is that time for him.
Yeah, were you going to hop on something before that?
I was just going to say, shoot. We were talking, you had mentioned, the pop culture. Obviously, we're talking about the pop culture tones of Steven Spielberg when it comes to film and stuff. Yeah, and people ignoring it. Specifically, where I was like, well, E.T. for me is the one. Just for me personally, when that was one of the movies that I remember seeing it when I was 8. Seeing it probably quite a few times when I was like from 8 to 10. Never saw it again until I was 20, and just thought, I'll watch this again. And the reason why I didn't see it for 10 years is because it's E.T. Because it's already something that I have in the back of my mind.
Exactly.
But you miss so much when you the rewatchability of majority of Steven Spielberg movies are absolutely fantastic. I tear up every time at the very end of that movie. It's such an emotional roller coaster ride, and that's just a small example. I mean, I'm just using E.T. for an example.
Well, it's like that cinema. We go to the movies to have those moments.
Correct, to feel, to dismiss from whatever you're doing in your real life.
Yeah, and I don't think he ever gets about it in a trashy way. Bucket list. It's done legitimately. Crash. It actually earns its catharsis and its pathos.
It's funny you said the bucket list was maybe Rob Reiner, and he evoked that in Stand By Me.
Correct. Yeah.
Rob Reiner nailed it for 2 decades in a row.
He did, man. Big time.
So many great films, and then he kind of lost it. Spielberg has had a bunch of stinkers. Mm-hmm. For a guy who's probably made 40 plus films.
That's what I'm saying. And 25 of them are classics.
Yeah, I have a good part 7, 10 I think are bad.
Right.
But Rob Reiner, I don't know if we'll make another good film again. I know Spielberg well. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I'm hoping for Indiana Jones 5. Maybe it's like Star Trek. All the odd ones are good.
Right.
I don't know.
I like Tunnel Doom. And Hook. I like more. Thing is, but going with that. Okay, so Temple of Doom and Hook, I think are of a tier higher than, say, Crystal Skull and Lost World.
Absolutely.
But they have. I mean, I'm talking to him because I know
I hate Temple of Doom.
But
I have so much fun with that one. But knowing full well,
how stupid it is.
So much fun.
But whereas the other ones are not. But there was still something about those films, and Hook too, that I couldn't imagine how bad those movies would be if Steven Spielberg didn't direct them.
Right.
Sure.
Particularly Hook.
Right. Well, that's one of my absolute personal favorites from just because. When I'm fighting, that's exactly it. Like Hook, Dick Tracy, like these kinds of movies. Were like Roger Rabbit. Were like those are. I'm always gonna love these movies.
Yeah, just because
when you're 6, I mean, heck yeah, man, and it kind of does. Hook specifically, what that is such a creative concept to me. Because when I'm a kid, I'm not watching for the lines and things like that. I'm like, oh, that's Wendy. Oh, that's so and so. That's blah blah blah. That's Neverland. I've solved this whole problem. Then you're 20, 30, and you watch this. You're like, this is such. I know you don't like this movie, Austin, but I just thought it was such a creative concept.
The concept
to send him back.
Yeah.
He has distanced himself so. He's so far removed mentally that he doesn't. Peter Pan can't even be Peter Pan.
And Dustin,
thought that was so great. And Dustin Hoffman,
he is perfect in that movie.
Yeah.
You cannot like that movie and tell me that is not one of the best performances by him.
Seriously, why now I despise them.
And Bob Hoskins.
And Bob Hoskins. They were a great team.
Well, the thing about it is, it's so interesting for Spielberg because the way you're describing it right now, I'm wondering, wait, why? On paper, kids shouldn't like this movie at all because it's an old, cynical Peter Pan.
That is true. Yeah,
it falls in the same category as we don't want to see old heroes like that, much like we don't want young replacements, which he tried to pull off in Crystal Skull. So Hook worked for so many people, but no one cares about Shia LaBeouf in Crystal Skull.
That's why
I think he does get a bit.
Yeah.
I think you can tell when he stops caring a bit because The Lost World to me was just. Maybe it's worse film to me.
The movie's a disaster.
That was equally as bad as Crystal Skull to me.
Yeah.
Which everyone, it was high hopes, I think, for everybody.
It's true.
Novel's not very good either, though.
The only difference...
There's a funny opening where he says he retcons his own death.
Yeah, and Malcolm's alive, I guess.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Which his death is at the very thesis of the
of
first
him?
story.
Yes.
Well, like the whole thing is don't mess with science.
Correct.
And it's proven when he dies. Like that's the
the book.
That's the journey. Yeah, in the book. And you know, for money, I'm sure Crichton just said, "Okay, fucking write a sequel." But
right.
but yeah, no. So like even when he fails, it does seem to be something there. Because again, I've watched Lost World a ton though. I hate that movie. But I've probably seen it 7 times. I don't know why.
Well, it's so strange because like the spectacle scenes are just shallow versions of what he's already done with the car. Also, shallow versions of movies he likes, the original King Kong. And it's just like when he tries to do the complete replica, it doesn't work because the Terminal is supposed to be his Capra film. But his Frank Capra film.
Oh,
made
gotcha.
It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah. Smith Goes to Washington. And it just never fit because it wasn't exactly what he does well. And I think he still has kind of amazing wonder about him. That's what really works when he is excited about his own stories and his own scenes. I remember this anecdote I read in the really fun book called The Men Who Would Be King about the formation of DreamWorks. Because it's him, Katzenberger, and some music mogul, I forget, who basically financed it. But it was a guy who went to have a meeting with Spielberg in his office in the early 90s, and on his desk there were 3 books. Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, Schindler's List by the guy who wrote Schindler's List, and the game guide for the first Medal of Honor game. And he says that one had all the bookmarks and like scratched notes in it and whatnot. The other 2 had not broken the spine yet. And they talked about how like Spielberg loves video games so much that like he was playing, I think, that game or something else like that, where he would just keep calling up his producers and discussing what happened on like level 7. They call up 2 hours later and happened on level 9. They go, "You're just playing this for hours on end. We need you to do some work now."
Why do you think that we haven't talked about Raiders that much because nothing much need be said. It's a great film.
Yeah, I adore it.
Yeah, it's great. Why haven't we, through our discussions about Spielberg here on the podcast and in general with you, Keith, and film discussions that we do have, why don't we talk about Saving Private Ryan? What is it about that film that just doesn't catch like a lot of his other films? Because it was beloved when it came out.
I mean, the same thing with like Sam Mendes with Road to Perdition for me.
Yeah,
like, I
that's
never bring that one up, and every time I see it, it's an amazing film, start to finish. Same thing with Saving Private Ryan.
I think Road to Perdition is a better film than Saving
But you get the example I'm saying. Like, that's the one that always escapes me when I think of Mendes. I don't think of that.
Is it because Band of Brothers came out and did it better?
You know what? That might have something to do with it.
I like a lot. Saving Private Ryan, I'm not a big fan of. I've only seen it maybe once or twice. I probably need to see it again because it is Spielberg. But war movies always feel a bit distant to me.
Yeah.
And I do think...
By war movies, you mean combat?
The actual combat war movies. I really can't get into them like a lot of people can get into, like watching 30 World War II documentaries in a row on History Channel.
Right.
Thing. The opening sequence is incredible.
Right.
I mean, that is insanely good filmmaking.
It's been duplicated several times. The attempt
Yes.
at going for that grainy war feel, or even in video games, it's been parodied, that opening of Normandy.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, okay, HBO obviously had, Band of Brothers, so it allowed it to. I mean, you have. I think it was an 8-part, wasn't it? Or was it 10?
So.
Yeah,
It was
something
8 to 12, something.
Spielberg
like that.
produced it, though.
Correct.
He did.
Yeah, and I think Tom Hanks helped produce that.
Tom Hanks
too,
produced
right?
it as well.
Yeah, so I thought it's easier to have 8 episodes, 10, 12, whatever it was, of the same 10 guys, and have an emotional connection with all of them. You know what I mean? Over the course of 8 episodes, 8 1-hour episodes.
Yeah.
But I thought that's what I think about Saving Private Ryan that I liked so much. It kickstarts you off like in the first 20 minutes where you don't know it's that chaotic as far as for you even as checking out the cast. You don't know who's going to live, who's not going to live. I mean, I didn't know who Barry Pepper was at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Vin Diesel was at the time.
Yeah.
So these are all
Vin Diesel's
random.
best performance.
Yes, not even arguable. That's absolutely correct.
The Iron Giant.
But okay. But you get what I'm saying. Like these were all. I mean, Upham. I didn't know any of these guys visually.
Yeah.
So it was great to see it. Ed Burns. You know what I mean? It was
That's true.
awesome for that for me because I'm being thrown into this whole chaotic mess of live, survive.
Yeah.
And then after that, that's where we start to get to meet all these people. That's why I thought that was such a cool approach. Whether that was on purpose or not, I think it was on purpose.
Well, the casting choice
That's
of
what I
Tom
like.
Hanks had to have been because
Well,
this really
even
sweet.
Tom Sizemore, they had a great little chemistry
like
with
Tom
himself.
Hanks is not the guy you picture on the beaches of Normandy.
That's
and
correct.
that contrast worked real well. Also, I typically, in general, despise movies where they open up with climactic whatever or something with the intent of drawing me in without actually
The bang for the bang.
Well,
just
without actually earning it. You're just doing it. See Man of Steel. They just assumed because I knew who Superman was, I was going to give a shit about what was happening.
I understand that.
But because the time and place of being World War II, it being D-Day, what's the word? The unconditional connection that I have for World War II because I'm American, I guess it worked a little better. And Tom Hanks.
Also, it has a very human approach to chaos.
Yeah.
I remember they really kind of bothered to give faces to everybody. You kind of see fear and emotion in everyone's eyes, much like how he brilliantly did it in Schindler's List. You see probably 1,000 faces in that movie, and you kind of feel all their stories by looking at them.
You really do, man. You really do. You think that might be super convoluted and too congested. I don't know how that's ironed out.
It's hard.
It's unbelievable to me.
Well, the movie's 3 hours long, which helps.
It's a fast 3 hours.
It is. Oh, it's very fast. That's why I said I could always watch that movie because it's so good. I know the subject matter. I get that, and I don't think it's insensitive to say the movie is like great. And I find the movie uplifting, whereas a lot of people find it horrifying.
Right.
But yeah, I because I've seen the film so much now, I literally know all those characters by name. I love their stories so much. And seeing it for the first time, I think the first time maybe through the movie, it may be difficult to get each one of them, but the more you see it, the more it gets ironed out, the more you know them all by name, and they just seem really real. I mean,
Right.
It's an
'cause
empathy
they were.
he has for his characters, and I think some of his stronger films are when he's actually creating empathy for it's not unlikable characters, because you can very easily do that, the kind of anti-hero whateverness, but Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it's a guy who, possibly by madness, is just driven to go to this place he keeps depicting as mashed potatoes. A cynical Peter Pan.
Right.
A complete thief in Catch Me If You Can. Like, these films work for
A Nazi
individual.
in Schindler's List.
Not an actual
Yeah,
Nazi,
she's a Nazi.
who is profiting off the Holocaust.
Yeah.
It is, in watching that in particular in Schindler's List again was the most shocking to me because it was unlike Hook. Catch Me If You Can, especially. Catch Me If You Can is super charming.
I like that movie a lot.
It's
Yes,
a really good movie.
Yeah, the rewatchability of that one's really great
Oh,
too. You don't
super
realize
fun.
it, and then you're 10 minutes in, you're like, well, I know what I'm going to do
Yeah.
for another hour and 15 minutes.
And because that one, like, it works because it's so charming, but Schindler's List, Oscar Schindler is not charming for about the first half of the
Yeah.
movie. He is like they keep giving him these alley oops to go, all right, here's the moment of decency, and he knocks it away. He goes, I'm not going to score this basket. It's painful to watch, and Spielberg just continues to make you curious though about him, and that's hard to do for a filmmaker.
You know, I was thinking,
not write him off.
I was thinking too about specific things that people like write off about him as like, oh, that was easy, that was cheap to do, like, because I've heard the little girl in the red coat in Schindler's List. I've heard her, like, I could have said the little woman in the red coat and not have been talking about Schindler's List, and you would have known I was talking about Schindler's List. But and that's kind of getting at the point I'm making, is that I've heard that move criticized because for sort of the Rob Reiner thing we're talking about later. But I see that almost as a moment of like, oh yeah, because someone made you care, right? Like you gave a shit, right? Like I don't see another filmmaker doing that.
People get defensive when they feel things.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. It's weird because even if you don't see her dead later in the coat, that scene's still effective because it highlights her.
Oh my god! And there's already an assumption there too. Like you did not need to see that dead body.
No,
it was great seeing it because I kind of forgot about her.
Yeah,
you kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that reminder, and it is kind of reminding you to let you know. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Like don't let's not just totally whitewash this whole thing. It's like a lot of people died because if you keep doing that, the fears people won't feel something.
Well, it individualizes it a little bit more.
Oh, it absolutely
that's what's so great about it. Of a little girl that we never even met.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, man.
So,
hey, if I may, really quickly,
please.
Another thing. I wanted you to definitely complete that because this one's a little.
Well, that's it.
It's pretty. It lives in the world. One thing that I was on my way over here that I wanted to mention is Schindler's List. Just because I'm going to defend it, which I don't feel like I need to, but it's just my. To say favorite is like gross, but the greatest movie in my book. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It could easily, for a lot of people, you're talking about people dismissing it, like things like that, and I think people. I've had this argument even with my father and stuff like that. Is it seems it's so easy because it's a Holocaust movie. Yeah. It can be so dismissed, and I'm like.
I've seen easy Holocaust.
That's what I'm saying.
I have too.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and I do think The Pianist is a very strong movie. I don't think it holds a candle.
It's cookie cutter.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it holds a candle in the approach that this movie made. I hate that we're focusing specifically on this movie so much, but I can't help it. In comparison to that, it goes back to the fact that we have 20 different main characters that we're following, or sub characters, what I mean? Even the tertiary characters that we follow, that we still know their full arc.
Yeah, but all the children have complete.
That's what I'm saying. That is a tough movie to do with that many people, that many characters. Even you could say, it's 3 hours though. Try to do that.
He made Jurassic Park.
Do that.
He made Jurassic Park the same year.
There you go. And he made another classic.
Did he make like Amistad, Jurassic Park, and like back to back?
I think that's how.
Without any break in the filming.
Maybe it's possible. I thought Amistad was like 98 though.
Was it?
I think it was earlier. I could be insane.
I don't know.
But I was just thinking about Amistad.
Live podcast.
Yeah,
right.
I was thinking about Amistad because, and we'll just briefly, because I wanted to end on a more positive note. But when we talk about the really effective, emotional, like historical stories of his. Why doesn't Amistad and The Color Purple, which are fine films, why don't they work? Like, why don't we think about them very much?
Do you have an opinion? You brought it up.
No. I was hoping you got to. I just don't know if...
Do you think it's the subject matter?
That's what exactly I was going to say. I don't know if that's true or not, because I haven't really thought of that before, but that's what immediately, my first impulse was possibly subject matter.
I think that is part of it. In some regards, but it's not like movies that have that same subject matter haven't gotten extremely popular. So I think it may have more to do with it being Steven Spielberg than made them.
I think it is, because I've heard wonderful things about the Color Purple book, which I have not read, but I think with that one, Spielberg has admitted that I wasn't the one who should have told that story.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, the enthusiasm we kind of talk about, which he may or may not be aware of when he's making the movie, does shine through to the final product.
In which he was uniquely equipped to make Schindler's List, obviously.
Yes.
Being the greatest Jewish filmmaker
that was
working.
That was a perfect choice.
I mean, obviously it's arguable, but I would say, the greatest filmmaker maybe ever, and he happens to be Jewish. So, yeah, I mean, he's pretty good. So I wanted to kick this around because we do this every 5, and you're here now. So I'll let you take longer to do it because I'll save you till the end. So we're ranking them.
We never get the 5 we did.
We got to rank.
Oh, okay.
To remind everybody out there.
I didn't remember you guys did that.
So best
I did too.
This will be fresh for me.
So we did the 5 in chronological order are Jaws, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Schindler's List, Minority Report, and Munich. So from best to worst is the wrong word.
Are we going from?
I'm gonna work backwards. I'm gonna try to.
Okay.
We try to, and we sometimes
Has the delivery be the final one?
Exactly.
Okay,
so,
I can do that.
Okay.
Munich, Minority Report, Last Crusade, Jaws, Schindler's List.
Okay. Mine is Minority Report, Last Crusade, Munich, Jaws, Schindler's List. I think we had one out there.
Did we give you enough time?
I'm trying to. Of the 5, I would say the least, quote unquote, loosely using that. You know what I mean? Would be Munich for me would be the 5th.
Yeah.
Number 1 being the best.
That's what.
Yep.
I would say Munich.
So far, you're right.
Oh. Mine may be almost spot on with you.
Yeah.
Munich. I would say, I think it might be exactly the same. Yeah, it would be Minority Report, even though I think that one's great. But
they're all great.
I know. I'm not saying any of these are bad, because I do think these are all really solid at the very least. Munich, Minority Report, Last Crusade. I love that movie so much.
I do too.
I love that.
It's my favorite.
It's my favorite too.
Mine's Raiders.
And I get it. I totally understand it.
Okay, I'm going to kick a question to you.
And then I would say, then you're right. Then I would go Jaws, and I mean, of course, I think anybody who's listening to me would have known
Schindler's List. Yeah, Schindler's List about Jaws. Okay, so on here, I think what we have is Munich, which is I think the best. What I think should have won Best Picture in 2005.
Yeah.
Minority Report, which I think should have won Best Picture in 2002, and also one of the best sci-fi movies ever made.
I would agree with that second part.
Last Crusade is I don't like Chicago. Last Crusade is the my favorite Indiana Jones movie, one of the most iconic film franchises of all time. Mm-hmm. Then we have Jaws, which is the greatest monster movie of all time.
And I love that you always say that, and it's absolutely true. It is a monster movie.
It is.
A lot of people don't think that. Maybe when they hear that, they're like, "What?"
Well, that's because they don't.
Take 2 seconds and think about it.
Yeah. It's a shark that is pissed off.
Yes,
that's a monster movie.
It's taunting people.
And then
Jesus,
Schindler's List, which here I go again, is one of the greatest films ever made.
Yeah.
So when we pick these 5, it's like whatever. But I was gonna say with you, if Raiders was on the list and you were doing 6 films, where would Raiders fall?
Well, I'll speak about that because I also would throw Jurassic Park would be my 5.
Yeah.
So I would have those 2 replacing Minority Report and Munich. Indiana Jones.
Last Crusade.
Wow, Last Crusade. Yes.
Oh, you would have tossed
Crusade
out.
Last Crusade, and put Raiders in.
I see.
And also Jurassic Park. So with that convoluted mess.
I got it.
I got it too. I followed it.
Yeah, I'll make sure I followed it. I would go from best to weakest. Schindler's List, Raiders Lost Ark, Jaws, Jurassic Park, Munich.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because this was weird.
Although, also, I think I would drop out Munich, but Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah, I don't know too.
He has this many good films.
This was odd because it's my 5 favorite. It's my 5 favorite Spielberg films.
Right.
I think so. So that's just fun. Like, or no, Spielberg literally did the 5 films.
Right.
5 favorite.
Well, what I think is okay. So you did your 5 because it is this list.
Yeah.
This is your 5.
Well, but we didn't even pick it that.
Oh no, hear me out. No, I know that.
Or Last Crusade would never be on this list.
Here's where I was going to spin this. So you picked your 5 in essence, right? Mm-hmm. You've now substituted your personal 5.
I stuck them in there.
And I'm not going to do this, but all I was going to say is there was a buddy of mine, Casey Bauer, used to say about musical theater, which I'm a big musical theater fan. I think you guys know. If you know a good, what did he used to say? And it applies to movies so well too. He was like, "What do you think's your favorite musical?" And I'd be like, "Well," or "What's your favorite song?" And he's like, "Well, I like this song and this one. Oh, that same musical, I like this one. Oh, and that same one, I like this." He goes, "If you're picking a favorite song and it's constantly rotating, that means that person or that musical did something right. Same thing with Steven Spielberg. The fact that you can take 5 out and have a completely new 5 that could possibly be equally as good, you know what I mean?
Oh,
the
yeah.
kind of rotation of that just blows my mind. The fact that you have made that many consistently right moves as far as directing, you know what I mean, and the artistic approach.
He's been since we've been talking here. He's been compared to the Beatles for music and Hulk Hogan to wrestling.
Right.
I mean, that pretty much says it all.
And I understood one of those analogies. So,
So
I think now we have to give review our next 5, which is
I'm excited.
so unfair right now because we just called one guy the Beatles of films.
Yeah.
But let's see.
Well, I said we brought those up.
We brought those up.
Yeah.
So let's see if this person can do it. This person, we're going back to a foreign director, but only 2 of the films are in a foreign language. This guy has been called a madman and a genius and one of the weirdest people out there. He's Werner Herzog.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What are the movies we're covering?
The movies we're going to cover of Werner Herzog, we're going to start off with Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Then we're going to go to a horror film, Nosferatu the Vampire. Then Fitzcarraldo. And then our first documentary on the podcast, Grizzly Man. And then one more documentary for good taste, Encounters at the End of the World, where we can kind of really see his epic quality, his kind of raw cinema style, also because he's kind of very split in the middle of a fiction filmmaker and a documentary filmmaker. Mm-hmm. We get to see his humor, his madness, he's
a wacky
his politics.
guy. He's a really wacky dude.
Yeah.
I've got his face. I don't know these movies nearly as well as you guys do, but man, oh man, I can see that guy's face.
You can hear his voice.
Yeah,
Exactly,
exactly, man,
exactly.
But we're not going to cover him this week. Typically, we have a wrap-ups on Wednesday.
We already recorded it.
Yeah. Wednesday, and the first episode comes on Friday, but for scheduling reasons, we decided to do a bonus episode, which we're going to say what it is, but we're not going to say the films we cover.
No, it'll be more fun than that.
We decided, because it's October, we're doing Let's Take 5 horror films.
Let's take 5 great horror films.
Great horror.
You guys are awesome. This is such a good idea.
These are 5 horror films that we think are the best of the genre, but also get to show the range and excellence of the genre.
Yeah, and that episode's a special episode because it's over an hour long.
It's our longest by far.
Yeah, by half. And then, or not by half, by 100%. So, speaking of mistakes, you may have heard some editing issues here on some of these.
Sure.
We apologize for that. We are okay at this.
It was really funny. That was so funny.
It's specifically in the Munich episode.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was so funny to hear. I'm like,
It happens.
Sorry. We wanted you to really hear that siren. Enough of us talking.
Anyway, that about wraps it up. Any final thoughts?
Spielberg's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think before people walked into this, they were like, well, yeah, I would think everybody's just going to...
It's Spielberg.
There's nothing else to say.
It's Spielberg.
And I wanted to thank Keith for being on this.
Yeah, thanks.
You have been such a supporter of our show for so long.
Heck yeah, man.
I'm thrilled to get to be on it.
Yeah, me too. That was a nice little phone call, guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
We thought you would be, but we were going to have him on for Schindler's List. Thought it'd be better suited here. I mean, I already said that, but that was 40 minutes ago.
I think that I'm having way more fun probably covering everything right now rather than.
What, you don't want to talk about Schindler's List? What's wrong?
I think I probably.
You're not going to have fun doing that?
I think I have 15 minutes of that's time for talking specifically about that movie. So.
Well, it's a great movie.
It's true.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
My name is Austin Luger.
I'm Eric Martindale.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
The only movie I've really made that has had the most extraordinary second chance at life is Schindler's List. And when I started the Shoah Foundation to raise awareness about the Holocaust through the testimonies of people that we interviewed who survived the Holocaust. We now have almost 52,000 survivor testimonies done in 65 languages in 38 countries from all around the world. And I formed an organization called the Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation, which interviewed, indexed, and cataloged, and now is disseminating, this kind of invaluable archive to schools. And that's the whole point of why I did this. But it's the only time I've made a movie where something better than the movie came along because of the opportunity to tell that story. That the Shoah Foundation was probably the reason the Schindler's List was made. And in that respect, Schindler's List is the most important film I've ever made. And the Shoah Foundation, outside of my family, is the most important work I've ever done inside the community.